Hello, everyone. Welcome to Or This. This is my Monday morning quarterbacking of the scriptures and the sermon for the previous Sunday. And this video is from Sunday, June 26th. The scriptures for the day were from 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 to 2 and 6 to 14, Psalm 77, verses 1 to 2, 11 to 20, Galatians chapter 5, verse 1 and verses 13 through 25, and Luke chapter 9, verses 51 through 62. I preached on the passage from the Gospel of Luke, but today I wanted to make mention of a couple things that I found in the Galatians passage that were of interest. The first was that the Galatians passage starts out saying, "For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery." Then in verse 13 it says, "For you were called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become slaves to one another." Now, we're getting ready in a couple of days to celebrate the 4th of July, Independence Day. It is a day that we generally celebrate freedom, the freedom that we have in this country. Of course, it was originally to celebrate the freedom that we won from Great Britain to become our own nation. But it has become a general celebration of all the freedoms that we have, and as well as those who have made those freedoms possible. So I think sometimes, though, when we see the word freedom, we think more about that kind of freedom, the freedom that we have as citizens of this country. When I hear talk about freedom as a citizen, it sounds as though we're talking about freedom to do whatever we want. And it's true. We do have freedom to do whatever we want. We have freedom to have whatever job we want to have that we're qualified for, of course. We have freedom to go out to eat. We have freedom to, if we have the money, to buy a yacht or a mansion, or if we have less money, we have freedom to buy whatever house we can afford to pay for. We have freedom to go to football games and baseball games and do all kinds of entertainment. We have freedom to decorate our homes the way we want. We have freedom to basically live a lot of things in life, do a lot of things in life that we want to do. That's not exactly the kind of freedom that Paul's talking about in Galatians. Because notice it says, do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence. Well, we do a lot of self-indulgence as citizens who are free in this country, don't we? Self-indulgence is like the definition of being an American, right? We can do whatever we want, and we do whatever we want with what we have because it's ours, and we are free to do with it whatever we want to do. And in a lot of cases, what we do is to please ourselves, to entertain ourselves, to make ourselves happy, to enjoy our life. Well, Paul says, do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become slaves to one another. You see, this idea of Christian freedom isn't exactly the same as the freedom we talk about when we celebrate our freedom any day, but certainly on the 4th of July. We are freed from sin. We are freed from the need to do rituals and things to please God so that God takes away our sin. We don't have to do that anymore because Jesus died for our sin. That's what we're freed from. We are freed from having to make up for all the wrongs that we've done in God's eyes because Jesus died on the cross and wiped away our sins. That's what we're freed from. But then as a Christian, the question is, what were we freed for? Well, since we don't have to focus on making up for our own sins before God, we are freed for loving one another and focusing on helping one another. And that is the commandment that is mentioned in verse 14. The whole law is summed up in a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So this is talking about caring for one another. And then it goes on to talk about loving your neighbor does not allow for us to bite and devour one another. So that's an interesting point, as a lot of debate is happening right now in our country, particularly. We debate about a lot of things, I think, all the time, but specifically this whole decision about Roe versus Wade has brought up a whole lot of feelings and a whole lot of opinions and a whole lot of discussion about what it means and what right or wrong, what if it was right or wrong. Basically, people have opinions about that. I think it's important that as we think about our freedom to love one another, to love our neighbor as ourselves, that we remember that in all things we are not to bite and devour one another. And so even when difficult topics come up and we find ourselves with different opinions about them, we remember that we're not in this to bite and devour one another. We're not in this to judge each other or prove each other wrong or try to prove that the other person is stupid. But in all of these things, we're trying to figure out how we live together. And the first and foremost part of living together is loving one another. Paul has this list then of that he says that are desires of the flesh that we are not to live by. He says, live by the Spirit, not to gratify the desires of the flesh. And the four that I underlined were anger, quarrels, dissensions, and factions. Because that seems to be the way we talk about a lot of things in our society today. Anger, quarrels, dissensions, and factions. You fit in this box and you fit in this box. If you're not in my box, then you're wrong. But then in a couple verses later, it talks about the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And love was already mentioned. Loving the neighbor, peace, patience, gentleness, self-control. Some of these go with the other things that Paul mentioned that were works of the flesh: fornication, impurity, licentiousness, idolatry, sorcery. He named a bunch of things. But I was focusing on particularly those things that we are led to do that cause us to bite and devour one another, which were anger, quarrels, dissensions, and factions. And the fruit of the Spirit is love, peace, patience with one another, kindness towards one another, gentleness, self-control. Sometimes we think of self-control as holding back from buying a lot of stuff, or holding back from eating a lot, like self-control when you're sitting in front of a buffet, or self-control when we're shopping. But what about self-control when it comes to the ways in which we talk to one another, and not spiraling down into drag down fights in which there's name calling and all that kind of stuff. Self-control allows us to be able to say what we're feeling, but also have a conversation, to understand that I'm not just in the conversation to get my point across so that you know you're wrong, but how do we have a self-control in conversations so that we're actually learning what the other person is thinking and feeling, to know them better, to know where they're coming from. So that was a sermon in itself, really. And after, when I was listening to the Galatians passage, I was circling and making brackets and underlining things as it was being read. And so that was the passage I went with for us today. And I think it was really, really relevant for us. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the Galatians text and how it helps us to know how to relate to one another, whether the times are good or whether the times are difficult, especially when the times are difficult and we might have some tensions and disagreements and issues to deal with. But the fruit of the Spirit still applies. So anyway, your thoughts, share them in comments either on YouTube or on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, Lord of Life YouTube channel. And thanks for watching. God bless.